You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-token lovers of liberty, and welcome to the show. It is Monday, August 4th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. It's also my niece Hannah's birthday. Happy birthday, Hannah, who is leaving to serve our country in the United States Navy. Wow, I didn't see that coming, Hannah. Congratulations. We've got all sorts of great stuff on the program for you today, including something I never thought I'd see. Dueling full-page ads in the New York Times over marijuana. We got the one from GrassIsNotGreener, the new Project Sam offshoot. It's pretty hilarious and a great reaction from Marijuana Majority's Tom Angel on that. We'll bring that to you in our Behind the Headlines segment, which also includes the new New York Times ad from Leafly, the Yelp of marijuana, I guess you could call it. Their ad is pretty nice too, so we'll show you that, plus a bonus ad from the people fighting the inevitable Florida medical marijuana question too. That again, I mean, I don't understand who they're trying to place these ads to. So we'll figure that out in Behind the Headlines today. Also on the show, we've got a Dr. Mitch Earleywine segment coming up. That's right. Dr. Mitch will be joining us for Cannabis Q&A. We'll be taking your live questions via our phone line at 971-533-7111, or you can get into our live chat room, which is available through our webpage at 420radio.org. Just look in the multicolored buttons there toward the header, and you'll see the chat window in nice orange there, and you'll be able to join the rest of us. Some of our most regular listeners are there, and a lot of help you can get from the moderators as well. And I'm having some weird things going on with my browser. So there we go. It finally popped up there. Bacon Dan will be joining us later on in hour 2, bringing us some daily toker tunes for Roots Monday as well. Also on the show today, after we speak with Dr. Mitch Earleywine, we'll have time for a radical rant. I'm going to dig again into GrassIsNotGreener.com. Forbes had a great takedown piece on this, and I'm going to give you an idea why this is the funniest anti-pot website I have seen in a long time. That's coming up in our radical rant. But first things first, we got to get you the headline news, and joining us from Colorado, our correspondent, Priscilla Sabin. Hi, Priscilla. How are you?
Oh, great. I'm mile high in Colorado.
Mile high today. Any good stuff happening on the weekend this weekend?
Yeah, we had the Denver County Fair and a lot of my friends were there, but I missed it because I had to work. And then I ended up going to the Renaissance Festival in Larkspur, which was it was really fun. I'd never been to one, and that was a lot of...
Is that like the, wearing the armor and, having sword fights and
yes.
stuff? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I love doing that stuff. I was a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, so I know all about that stuff, man. Get my 10th level paladin going. Anyway, +3 microphone of healing. So Priscilla will bring us the headlines coming up right after the first break. We've got some statistics coming up from D.C.'s marijuana decriminalization law. Washington's Vashon Island has some interesting problems for marijuana growers. Cheyenne County, Kansas is complaining about Colorado weed. California man is the latest to make bad BHO headlines. And just what the hell is a marijuana mullet? We'll tell you when we get to the 420 Radio News right after this break with Priscilla Sabin. Thanks, Priscilla. We'll see you in a minute.
Okay.
All right. When we come back, Priscilla Sabin and the 420 Radio News. Stay tuned for some of our sponsors' messages. They help support us here at 420 Radio, and you can too. Become a VIP member today.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get high.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz thinks it's okay for medical marijuana patients to go to federal prison. On May 30th, she voted against an amendment that would respect Florida's new laws and protect Florida's patients. Even though 88% of Florida voters support medical marijuana, why would Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz vote to send patients like this to prison? Is Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz out of touch with Florida?
420radio.org presents the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour with Herb Thrasher and Radical Russ from Portland, Oregon. Herb Thrasher Flower Hour is 2 hours of unrestrained rock, metal, punk, and alt country music, interviews, concert bootlegs, and sports with America's hardest rocking marijuana activist stoner, Herb Thrasher. Live 2 hours Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific, with replays at 8 and 5 on Fridays and replays Saturday at 8 p.m. Pacific on.
I don't use marijuana, but as a teacher of 36 years, I can tell you lots of other people use it. I don't believe in prohibition. I don't think it works. Prohibiting it hasn't stopped anybody from getting a hold of it. I would like to see it regulated so that maybe kids can't get a hold of it so easily. I know they get a hold of it now very easily. I support a new approach to marijuana. I support legalizing it. It's with us. It's not going to go away. And if we can get money through the taxation, we can also educate our kids about it. That's why I support it.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hey folks, it's your 420 Radio News for Monday, August 4th, 2014. In the first 2 weeks since DC's marijuana decriminalization law took effect, the Metropolitan Police Department has written 27 civil citations for violations, multiple outlets reported last week. But just as many arrests have been made for marijuana-related crimes not affected by the new law. The law, which says that anyone caught with possession of an ounce or less of marijuana will receive a $25 fine, was passed as a way to reduce the amount of marijuana-related arrests in D.C. The staggering statistics show a huge racial disparity in marijuana-related arrests in D.C., with persons of color accounting for more than 90% of all arrests. Meanwhile, D.C. Cannabis Campaign launched a ballot initiative to legalize marijuana in the district. The group turned in more than 57,000 signatures, more than twice the amount needed to get on the ballot for the November general election last month, and they expect the D.C. Board of Elections to announce this week if their initiative will indeed be on the ballot.
Well, good news coming out of D.C. there. 2 weeks isn't a really long time to, be able to set any trends or be able to detect any trends in this. But 27 violations, $25 each. So what do they make? $700, $675, something like that. The $25 fine is the lowest fine in the nation. As far as arrests for crimes not affected by the new law, the arrest would have to be, I believe, possession over an ounce or possession with intent to sell or selling marijuana, or perhaps growing marijuana as well. As for this D.C. Cannabis Campaign trying to get marijuana legalization passed in Washington, D.C., they've got enough signatures. It's more than likely that they're going to be on the ballot as far as the D.C. Board of Elections is concerned. But as far as the federal Congress is concerned, that's another story. Remember, everything that happens in the Washington, D.C. federal district has ultimate veto authority by the federal Congress, and they can pull all sorts of shenanigans as far far as funding. They can say things like, well, you know, you can spend no money to implement your legalization law, or you can spend no money to count the votes, is what they did with the medical marijuana law. It'll be interesting to see how Congress reacts to this. I can't imagine that they're just going to sit by and watch marijuana be legalized right there in Washington, D.C., when you got so many of these red state and Tea Partier and even Blue Dog Democrats from the Midwest and the South that really need to have that strong, tough on drugs campaign approach. So it's going to be very interesting. And I think Washington, D.C., how it goes down can tell us a lot about how marijuana legalization is going to play out nationwide.
True. For growers who wish to farm legal cannabis on Washington's Vashon Island, there may be no legal way for a state-approved marijuana producer to move product across the Puget Sound. Since no roads connect Vashon to the mainland, marijuana growers will have to move their product by air or sea, both regulated by federal agencies, which still consider marijuana to be illegal. For Scott Durkee and the 13 other growers seeking licenses on Vashon, some of whom have already invested thousands of dollars into their business, this poses a complication, especially given there's only 3 retail shops planned for the island. Quote, "We're not going to sell it all on Vashon," said Durkee, an island resident. Quote, "We're stoners, but we're not that much of stoners," end quote. Vashon Island could be a pot grower's utopia. At 37 square miles, it's larger than Manhattan, but with less than 1% of the population. This isolated rural farming locale, combined with high voter approval of legalized marijuana, makes the island attractive real estate for outdoor growers. Modern Farmer dubbed Vashon Weed Island last year.
Yeah, Weed Island it is. And, you know, there's a similar problem they've got in Hawaii as well. When it goes all the way back to medical, you know, you're going to grow on one island. How are you going to get it out to the other island? And you got to fly, or you got to take a boat. And all of that is, you know, federal territory as far as the law is concerned. It just goes to show that, you know, we've already thought of the banking and all of the other federal areas, taxes, where it being legal in a state crosses these federal barriers that we have to deal with. And this is just another one of them, you know, dealing with places that are either going to have some sort of flight or some sort of boat to transport from the state to just even other parts of the state. Washington State's going to have this problem. Hawaii's going to have this problem. I imagine there could be, you know, similar if you're growing on Catalina Island in California, or some of the East Coast states that have some of these islands that are reachable only Martha's Vineyard, right? Air or sea. So anyway, Nantucket Island, I guess it would be. But anyway, interesting problem that we're going to have to solve here, and maybe only federal legalization can solve that.
Life in Cheyenne County, Kansas is more about cows than cannabis. But now this part of the Old West is on the front line of marijuana's new frontier. Pot is legal in nearby Colorado, but when it leaves the state, it often travels across Kansas' remote highway. A recent study found that nearly half of all marijuana purchases in Colorado are made by out-of-state visitors. Under federal law, that marijuana has to remain within Colorado's borders. In 2013, the federal Rocky Mountain high-intensity drug trafficking areas calculated 288 cars smuggling Colorado marijuana beyond state lines. That may not seem like much, but experts estimate that they are only catching about 10%, meaning 90% of illegal trafficking is going unnoticed. We've documented 40 different states that it's gone to, said Tom Gorman, the agency's director. On patrol, arrest is not the only answer in a cash-strapped county of fewer than 3,000. Sometimes it's more beneficial to let the sheriff confiscate the small amount of marijuana found if they don't pose a threat, according to the county sheriff.
Yeah, you know, Cheyenne County, Kansas's problem isn't that Colorado legalized, it's that Kansas still prohibits. And this is the thing that these nearby states are going to have to realize, is that states have the right to do what they will with weed, and it's a weed. and lots of people like it, and they're going to traffic it, and there's nothing a state could do. I mean, I imagine some of these states might ask Colorado to set up those roadside, toll plazas like you have in California. When you go to California and you stop by and they say, "You got any fruits or vegetables on you?" No, and then they wave you through. Is that what they want us to do to make sure the weed doesn't get out? Because here's the problem I've got with all of this belly aching from these nearby states about Colorado marijuana. They say they're only catching 10%. 90% of it's getting through. So if 90% of it's getting through, tell me what terrible thing has happened aside from people violating your prohibition, saying that you said no and they went and did it anyway. Are you seeing more traffic fatalities? Are you seeing more kids going psychotic? Are you seeing more adults not going to work? Right? What is the harm here? The fact
they're just stepping on their grass.
You're just stepping on their grass. That's what they've got the problem with, is get off my damn lawn, kids. That's what they've got the problem with. They can't show that there's been any actual harm, and they're actually harming their own taxpayers by continuing to spend money in this futile attempt to try to stop the weed. Use that tax money to help people instead of trying to hurt people.
Yeah. A California man faces controlled substance and child endangerment charges after a marijuana cooking process allegedly set his apartment on fire. Central Marin police said Brian Holland, 29, was attempting to convert marijuana into a wax form late Saturday when butane used for the process ignited from being too close to the heater pilot light. Holland was taken to a local hospital to be treated for a minor burn on his arm suffered in the fire. Holland's 2 children, 2 and 4, were asleep in a bedroom adjacent to the living room where the fire started, but were not hurt. And Holland's mother was also in the apartment, authorities said. Upon being released, Holland was booked at Marin County Jail on 2 counts of child endangerment and 1 count of manufacturing a controlled substance. The fire had been put out by residents with a fire extinguisher before responders arrived, leaving only a burn mark on the living room carpet, fire officials said. Police reportedly seized more than 2 pounds of marijuana, 24 cans of butane, and other materials used for the conversion process.
All right, folks. Those of you in Oregon who keep questioning me about New Approach Oregon's ban on homemade marijuana extraction, here you go. This is why it's in there. This is the exact kind of story that people don't want to see in the headlines that are going to make people nervous about legalization of marijuana. Now, I've been reading up a lot on this, and some people that I deeply respect in the concentrates industry, and one of them is a friend named Daniel DeSalle, and he made a really good point about, he made a lot of really good points about medical users and people who do it safely outside where it's ventilated, or people that are using closed loop extraction systems, very, very understandable. And he came up with what I thought was a novel regulatory idea. And that is, don't make the penalty for illegal manufacture of hash, or don't ban hash making. Ban the indoor discharge of butane. Right? Just ban the indoor use of flammable solvents, butane, propane, hexane, whatever it might be. Because that's really what we're afraid of. People discharging these flammable gases inside their homes where they might cause explosions. He wouldn't even have to be making hash. Someone just sitting around discharging butane. That's the crime. So now the hash making is why people are doing that. But the real danger here is the explosive gas. So let's make discharging explosive gases indoors illegal, instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater and having it so patients can't manufacture, a potent concentrate that they really need.
What if a pot-related business wants a, quote, marijuana mullet? Business up front and party in the back. This is the case at Three Kings Dab Supply Shop in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. In the past couple of months, the small business has gotten into some hot water for allowing customers to smoke pot on the back patio. According to a city ordinance, Wheat Ridge prohibits businesses from allowing customers to consume marijuana on the property. On June 17th, the owners were issued a citation. On July 10th, the owners were served a cease and desist letter. Attorney Robert Corey, who is representing Three Kings Dab Supply, says the back patio is a private area and only those invited to hang out there by the owners are allowed. Quote, "That is our right, and we are going to continue to exercise our rights," Corey said. Quote, "Outdoor smoking in private places on private property is allowed under Amendment 64, and it's allowed under any Wheat Ridge ordinance," end quote.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. People are just going to have to get used to the fact that they're going to have to tolerate the smell of marijuana to some extent. We do have these rights to gather, to peaceably assemble. If cigar smokers can gather, if beer drinkers can gather, we should be able to gather. But my favorite part of this story, I love the term marijuana mullet. That's one of my favorite terms ever.
Yeah, that's really good.
All right, well, speaking of business up front, we finished the business. Time for the party in the back. It's 4:20 in Denver, Colorado. Priscilla Simon has some studying to do, I understand. We'll see you, Priscilla. When we come back, we go behind the headlines and take a look at 2 competing marijuana ads from the New York Times and a bonus ad from Florida. It's the Russ Belville Show. .420 Radio, the world's voice of marijuana legalization.
What the authorities should do is decriminalize pot use. You want to do it in your house, not bother anyone? Fine. Go outside with a joint or a pipe, you pay a fine.
A majority of voters support changing failed marijuana laws. Legalization and decriminalization are mainstream solutions. We are the marijuana majority. marijuanamajority.com.
Join us for the International Cannabis Business Conference September 13th and 14th in the Portland Ballroom at the Oregon Convention Center. The International Cannabis Business Conference will focus on the emerging cannabis industry in Oregon, the United States, and around the world, putting you in front of the industry's foremost entrepreneurs, political leaders, and attorneys. Also showcasing over 40 cannabis-related industry exhibitors, offering VIP lunches and free nightly networking events. Prepare yourself for America's next great industry.
Congressman Andy Harris thinks it's okay for medical marijuana patients to go to federal prison, even though Maryland passed a medical marijuana bill in April. On May 30th, Congressman Harris voted against an amendment to respect Maryland laws and protect Maryland patients. Why would Congressman Harris vote to send patients like this to prison? 72% of Maryland residents support medical marijuana. Is Congressman Harris out of touch with Maryland?
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. Are you a hypocrite? If you live a closeted cannabis lifestyle, you are. Read about 7 people living a closeted cannabis lifestyle who are on the verge of coming out in The Hypocrites by Mara K. Eaton. Available at areyouahypocrite.net. You can purchase the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, also available on iTunes. Check out Mara K. Eaton on Facebook as well. Learn more at areyouahypocrite.net.
Welcome back, everybody. 23 after the hour, and time for us to go behind the headlines. And of course, the big story last weekend was the New York Times in their Sunday op-ed editorial, the editorial board coming out in favor of nationwide marijuana legalization. And they followed that up with a week-long series of editorials that highlighted different aspects of prohibition, the history, the racism, what's happening in Colorado, and so forth. I highly recommend you check those out. Go to the New York Times and just use their search feature. Find their stuff on legalization. There was one that was a history of the New York Times' previous editorials on marijuana legalization. That was fascinating to read as well. But speaking of history, history was made this week when not only the New York Times came out and legalized, or came out for legalization, but the leading anti-pot group came out with a full-page New York Times ad to counter it. This, of course, is the brainchild of Project Sam and Kevin Sabet with a new website they call GrassIsNotGreener.com. Now, we'll go into more details on GrassIsNotGreener.com in our radical rant at the end of the show. But this was the ad that they placed in the New York Times, and this was supposed to be an anti-marijuana ad. Looking at it, it's kind of hard to tell, but we'll let this scroll up for you nice and slow. It features a man on a gray background, and it's a man in a suit, except plastered over where his head would be is the picture of a hippie, a guy with long hair, good-looking guy actually, long hair, sunglasses, scarf tied around his head. Next to him it says perception, and then you scroll down and you see the body of the businessman leaning his hands against the conference table, and it says reality. And the text that goes with it: the legalization of marijuana means ushering in an entirely new group of corporations whose primary source of revenue is a highly habit-forming product. Sounds a lot like another industry we just put in its place. Many facts are being ignored by this and other news organizations. Go to GrassIsNotGreener.com to see why so many major medical associations oppose marijuana legalization. GrassIsNotGreener.com. So this was kind of funny because taking a look at it, it's like, how is this supposed to be an anti-ad? Because if people's perception was that marijuana was just all about the hippies, and now you're showing that no, the reality is it's about business people, it's about business, it's about people that obey laws and pay taxes and create jobs, well, that doesn't sound very frightening at all. That sounds like just the kind of recipe that America needs right now. A new big corporate industry that creates jobs and pays taxes and takes over the marijuana business from the criminal cartels that currently run it, from the school kids who are currently dealing it, from the gangs that are currently fighting over turf over it. How is this even a negative ad? And I'm not the only one who thought that. Marijuana Majority's Tom Angel was quoted in Forbes magazine. Now, Forbes already did a great takedown on Grass is Not Greener, but he was quoted in Marijuana Majority basically making that point. And he came out and said, I wish that Project Sam would have gotten a hold of us. We would have loved to have helped fund that ad. Now, just this weekend, there was another new ad that appeared from Leafly, the kind of the yellow pages of pot. They do reviews of strains, right? And it shows kind of a nice scenic New York City type neighborhood. And in that neighborhood, we have a gentleman at the brownstone there at the door waiting to get in. Kind of nice looking guy with looks like a New York Times under his arm. And it shows the Indica Diamond OG strain logo from Leafly. And the text, Ian chose an Indica cannabis strain to relieve his MS symptoms. And then further down, you scroll down past the stairway up to the tenement, and there's a young woman who's jogging by and wearing a smart little tracksuit there. And she's got the logo from Leafly for sativa, for a Gene Guy strain. And the text there is, while fighting cancer, Molly preferred a sativa cannabis. And you get to see her running by. And we get down to the bottom, and the campaign from Leafly is called Just Say No. That's KNOW, of course. Congratulations on the Compassionate Care Act, New York. The first step in benefiting from cannabis is making informed choices, from learning about the right products and strains for you to finding trusted clinics and dispensaries nearby. We'll be here to help. Leafly, leafly.com/NY, #JustSayNo. So these are full page ads, and that's not cheap, folks, when we're talking about the New York Times. And just as a bonus, as we fade out here, the final ad, this is the one that's appearing in Florida lately for the anti-medical marijuana people there. This one features a hospital setting. Now, we'll be right back with Dr. Mitch Earleywine after these messages. Yes, 2 lines for medical marijuana cards. A lady in a wheelchair with cancer, or a whole bunch of people who can't sleep and have eating problems. As if that's a bad use of medical marijuana.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with our Shoutcast stream for all internet-enabled media players. Go to rad-r.us/420shout or just click the Shoutcast icon below the live radio feed at 420radio.org. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you're detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com and follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter.
420radio.org is proud to replay Green Stream Radio with Grandma Cat, Tim Me, and On One from Olympia, Washington. Green Stream is bringing you the latest developments in legalization in Washington state straight from the state capitol, plus on-site shows at emerging cannabis clubs and hemp fests. Catch the replays Tuesday at 11 Pacific on 420radio.org. The International Cannabis Business Conference takes place September 13th and 14th at the Portland Ballroom in the Oregon Convention Center in Portland, Oregon. Featured speakers include Oregon Senator Floyd Przansky, U.S. Congressman Earl Blumenauer, Daily Dish blogger Andrew Sullivan, author Doug Fine, and Harborside CEO Steve D'Angelo. To learn more, visit our website at internationalcbc.com. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net.
It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earleywine. Dr. Earleywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times magazine. Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 32 after the hour. We got Dr. Mitch on the phone. How you doing, Mitch?
Crazy day, crazy day.
Crazy day. Nice and hot. I understand it's Barack Obama's birthday. Is that correct?
I'd have to give him a call.
Get right on the phone. You got the red phone there at SUNY Albany, I understand.
He sent my grandma a birthday card when she turned 100, so I think she'll probably return the favor.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, well, good to hear that. Dr. Mitch, of course, is expert on all things cannabis except the growing of it. So if you have any questions about strains, save those for Danny Danko. But our phone lines are open at 971-533-7111, or you can ask questions via our chat room. Ask the moderators how to make the Q icon. It makes it easy for me to pick out the questions as they come along. But we like to open up by giving Dr. Mitch the first word in what's latest in cannabis science.
Well, actually, you sent me a number of interesting links here, Russ, and I'm happy to discuss any of those in whatever order you want. The recent reviews I've done just in the cannabis literature have all been crazy interactions with social anxiety and how marijuana users are often using it to treat social anxiety. If anybody does have some issues with social anxiety, there's a wonderful old book by Phil Zimbardo called Shyness. It actually is as good a treatment as anything I can think of, and just wanted to make sure that listeners understood that.
All right. Well, let's start off by talking about secondhand pot smoke, because this has come up in a couple of different areas. In one respect, a couple stories I read where, it's talking about child endangerment and whether or not parents should be smoking around their kids because of the danger of secondhand smoke. And on the other side, in the NFL, Josh Gordon, last year's NFL leading wide receiver, is appealing his indefinite suspension from the NFL, claiming that his positive test was the result of secondhand smoke. So I thought we'd tackle both of those. Is secondhand smoke a danger to adults or children? And can you really test positive on a drug test from secondhand smoke?
I mean, everybody knows that I would love to see the NFL relax some of those rules about cannabis use because it just seems ridiculous, particularly if you're a Denver Bronco.
Seattle Seahawks.
In fact, we don't have data suggesting that secondhand smoke would create a false positive unless you're in a real hot box. So, I mean, if he was in a car where people were literally blowing smoke in his face and you couldn't see into the car because of the smoke, I would certainly believe it. But it seems like that would be pretty ill-advised, given what he knows about the NFL rulings. But I think it does underlie this kind of bigger question, which is why on earth can't NFL players use cannabis?
Yeah, and it's a pretty shocking combination of stories that have come out from the NFL recently. Of course, guys getting 4-game suspensions for smoking pot. Ray Rice getting a 2-game suspension for knocking his wife unconscious. So, you know, there's a little bit of a problem there in severity and scope, I would say.
I have to agree, and I hope feminists everywhere will join me in saying that that is not an appropriate penalty for knocking anyone out, particularly your wife.
Not at all. I think especially, you know, when we think of these football players being so strong and well-trained and aggressive that, you know, there should be a zero tolerance for any sort of, you know, public aggression by a football player. They should be a season suspension right there. But anyway, let's get back to a marijuana story here, because here in the Pacific Northwest, in the Seattle Times, there was an article that came out where a gentleman wrote about his experiences going to the park with his kids, and then there's secondhand pot smoke from skateboarders nearby who wouldn't put it out and said, you know, screw you, dude, it's legal. And, you know, other people complaining about being at concerts or being at the beach where their kids are subject to the secondhand smoke. Is there any danger from the secondhand smoke, and what can we do to better deal with this intersection of parents with kids versus legal pot smoking?
It's extremely unlikely that a kid would get high from secondhand smoke in any kind of open area and even in a large concert hall, but I feel like we really don't want to push the envelope on this kind of thing. We're brand new to legal cannabis, and we don't want to basically insult the folks who have actually helped us make this happen. And so a lot of public consumption is really not part of the spirit or the letter of the law in most of these places. And so I encourage everybody we know to make sure that, you know, you're courteous about folks who are not users being in the vicinity, much like you put your 40-ouncer in a brown paper bag. It's just kind of the nice thing to do, and I really want to spread that image that cannabis users are considerate and mellow.
Yeah, for me, I made a flip response to, I think Dan Riffle from MPP tweeted something out about this, and I basically responded that, you know what, my public pot smoking protocol has not changed one bit since me living in Idaho. It's the same protocol. Go downwind, be where you can't be seen, be where you can see people approaching you. I mean, know your environment, know where you're at, set and setting, right? So to me, I would say to tokers out there that, you know, we used to have to keep it on the down low. Keep it on the down low. We already know how to do that.
It's not demanding a new set of skills in any way, and I feel like it's not too much for those who aren't users to ask this of us.
Yeah. Now, I would appreciate if we eventually got the laws set to where they did have some public areas set aside for pot smokers. I think that's the more logical solution. I mean, people wouldn't smoking around your kids if they did have a designated place to go smoke it, but maybe that's further on down the road, you think?
Or even just to clearly don't smoke it here, you know.
Yeah.
So a lot of the folks who are still struggling with cigarettes, pretty soon they're only going to be able to smoke on the moon, I'm afraid.
Yes.
But there definitely are areas that it is okay, and if we could just have the same, I'd be pretty eager to have that kind of arrangement.
All right. We have a question from our chat room. Speed Limit says he started experimenting with cannabis when he was about 10 years old. By the time he was 16, he was consuming every day. He's been consuming regularly since that time and now does so for medical purposes. He's now 43 years old. Is he doomed?
I would not say he's doomed. What's curious is, that is some prime time for brain development, so he may want to see what it feels like to keep his doses as low as possible, to take the occasional day off if his medical symptoms permit it. and then make sure, he's getting a full-bodied life, so to speak, making sure he's still involved in multiple activities. Part of his life isn't just cannabis, that he's got recreational things and social things and occupational things that he can take care of so that he gets to have a neat, multifaceted life.
There we go. And judging from Speed Limit in our chat room, he's having definitely a most interesting life. Okay. Another topic I wanted to talk about, this was a great article that came out in the Washington Post. The Wonk blog did a couple of articles in a row. This one was Medical Marijuana Opponents' Most Powerful Argument is at Odds with a Mountain of Research. Basically, they were saying that the WOTC argument, what about the children, was kind of hollow when you look at the data from states that have both done medical, decrim, or even legalized marijuana and didn't see mass increase in youth use rates. I know this is something you studied in depth. Can you tell us more about it?
Rod Skager first started looking at these data in '96 when California passed their medical marijuana law, and literally no impact or modest decreases sometimes because teens don't want to use grandma's nausea med. And then Karen O'Keefe and I have had papers out about this since 2005, updated in 2011. It's pretty clear now. We really aren't going to see any kind of increase in teen use when you pass medical marijuana laws. The data from Colorado and Washington we're all eager to see, but as far as some of the intentions and things like that are concerned, we're not seeing any big increase on that. And in truth, most teens are really quite capable of accessing cannabis even when it's illegal. And when you ask them, why don't you smoke? I don't smoke because it's illegal, never seems to enter the conversation.
Yeah, I guess then the theory there is kids already have all the access they want or need. Changing the access for adults isn't going to affect that.
And it's literally that simple. I don't know what else to say.
All right. Another great article, this one coming out of the Los Angeles Times, Drug Courts Meant to Aid Addicts, Now a Battlefield of Pot Politics. And in this article, it may have been one of the first times I've seen a mainstream paper write an article that illustrated a point that I've made many, many times, and that is drug courts survive off of pot smokers because we're the employed guys with insurance who can pay for it, and we're the ones who can pass the P tests and give you the great recovery statistics you're looking for that next grant. We are the grist for the mill, so to speak.
Sad but true, and it's funny how many treatment beds are essentially wasted on folks who could easily kick cannabis for a week on their own to pass a drug test if they needed to. And it kind of saddens me to think that there are probably folks who are really struggling with crack cocaine or intranasal cocaine or meth or something like that who are having a harder time getting treatment simply because some pot user is in that inpatient program. Yeah,
we don't want to see that happen. All right, one last question we'll have time for here about this Pennsylvania representative who had introduced a bill to legalize basically the Charlotte's hemp marijuana. They're calling it therapeutic hemp or medical hemp now. What do you think about this federal attempt to legalize CBD?
I have tons of apprehensions about this bill in particular, but in truth, I will not do anything to stand in the way of any kid with seizures getting access to CBD. So by all means, I hope this passes. I just don't want to see it turn into an excuse to then not legalize later on down the line. And I do feel like some of the media attention to this has played up CBD and played down THC, and in fact, THC is very important for a number of medical uses of cannabis, including some of its anti-seizure properties, and I don't want that to go forgotten.
Absolutely. All right. Dr. Mitch Earleywine is the chair of the Normal Board of Directors and author of numerous books on marijuana. And if you want more information and you're just shy and don't want to call in or chat publicly about this, you can always send an email to 420research@gmail.com. That's 420research@gmail.com. And also check out normal.org. On the blog there, Dr. Mitch has a great post up debunking the White House's reefer mad reaction to the New York Times. It covers brain development, academic achievement, driving, and addiction. And anything you want to add to those, Dr. Mitch?
By all means, if people are willing to read those and just point your friends towards them and understand those arguments and help spread the word, it's going to be a better world for us all.
And how are you doing with your caffeine disorder? Apparently, you have a caffeine disorder.
Sad but true. I relapsed today, but hey, maybe I need to turn it over to a higher power.
There we go. I don't know how much higher we can get, Dr. Mitch, but we'll find what we can. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Mitch joins us every Monday here for Cannabis Q&A, and we'll talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right. When we come back, we'll have time for a radical rant. In the rant today, we're going back to the new Project Sam website, GrassIsNotGreener.com, just to show you how silly it is. It's just incredibly silly. Graham Chapman should be showing up any minute to tell us how silly it is. Be back in a minute.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the TuneIn Radio app for all mobile platforms. Go to rad-r.us/420tunein or just click the TuneIn Radio icon below the live radio feed on 420radio.org. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
I get angry just thinking about it. Makes me mad. Little kids doing drugs, it turns my stomach. That stuff hurts. It stops you from living up to your potential. It holds you back. It hurts the user. It hurts his family. And it hurts his friends. I just want to shake some sense into you kids that are using drugs and think about using. So remember, don't, or else. Okay?
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. I'm Radical Russ Belville, and I want to thank you for listening to 420 Radio. We couldn't survive without you and our sponsors, and I'd like you to check out one of our prime sponsors, the National Cannabis Coalition. I've been working with NCC since June of 2012, and I'm proud to be part of the team they have assembled. National Cannabis Coalition is building the partnerships with reformers, lawmakers, and industry we need to be successful. Visit the National Cannabis Coalition website at nationalcannabiscoalition.com or the easier-to-remember ncc420.com. That's where you'll get the exclusive first look at my radical rants, as well as informative articles from the nation's top cannabis pundits. Visit ncc420.com today, and if you have your phone handy, text Russ to 420-420 to support NCC and 420 Radio. It's a free text message that helps us help you end adult marijuana prohibition. Learn more at ncc420.com, and thanks for supporting independent marijuana legalization public radio.
You can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 49 after the hour, and for today's Radical Rant, the subject is GrassIsNotGreener.com. That's right, GrassIsNotGreener.com, the new project from Project Sam, their rebuttal to the New York Times coming out in favor of marijuana legalization. And it's a lot of the same rehash that we have always heard from Project Sam, but when they serve it up in a new casserole, I like to give it a nice taste and review it. Kind of like Gordon Ramsay might review a kitchen. But anyway, let's get to it here, shall we? This is the website of Grass is Not Greener in the little window here. And it's over there. Excuse me. GrassIsNotGreener.com with the big heading, "If we're not careful, the marijuana industry could quickly become the next big tobacco." Now, this is supposed to frighten us because, we hate big tobacco. Because, big tobacco lied about their products. They said they were safe and they weren't addictive and they were good for you. And doctors used them. And then they started using Joe Camel and marketing to kids and making candy cigarettes and, putting flavors in them. All these terrible, terrible, pernicious, evil, terrible things that they did. So we're supposed to hate big marijuana because they'll be just like that. Except for one problem. Big marijuana already exists. There already is a big marijuana. It's the cartels, kids, and criminals that currently run the market. It's the people that don't follow the law, the people that behead their rivals, that shoot each other in the streets, and that will sell product that's been keefed or been tainted or a bag that's short, etc., etc. All of the problems that we see from an unregulated criminal black market. That's the current big marijuana. And I fear the Sinaloa cartel much more than I fear Philip Morris or Altria or any big tobacco company, because at least Philip Morris and Altria, you can take them to court, you can sue them, and when you do sue them, like we did in 1998, you can get an amazing settlement that kills Joe Camel, that takes all advertising away from kids, that gets rid of the cigarette vending machines, that puts the smokes behind locked counters at the stores, that require the clerks to be more diligent in checking IDs, and that has led to us going from 7 out of 10 kids trying cigarettes when I was in high school to less than 4 out of 10 trying cigarettes now in high school. So I'm not afraid of a big marijuana being the next big tobacco because we learned that we can control big tobacco. And furthermore, big marijuana won't have to use the same tactics big tobacco did because big tobacco was selling something that was toxic and addictive and tasted like shit. Okay? When you first try a cigarette, you don't like it. Now, some people, a very small minority, might get the nice buzz off it. Most people, they hack, they cough, they think it tastes awful, it smells awful. And if you're an adult, you're not likely to want to take that habit up. But if you're a kid, peer pressure can work on you. You can want to look cool, and you can develop that addiction before your brain has developed its full, frontal cortex by age 25 that's responsible for decision making and risk taking and all of that. You wonder why we draft soldiers so young. That's part of the reason why too. But anyway, big tobacco had to market to kids because they couldn't market to adults. Adults were not likely to take up their product. In the case of big marijuana, the kids, as we spoke to Dr. Mitch in the last segment, the kids who want marijuana can get it. They're getting it. They're already getting it. Legalization, and as we've seen through the studies, doesn't seem to increase teen use any because those that want it can get it and already are. What it does increase is the use by adults. It finally gives adults access that doesn't involve them sitting in a Walgreens parking lot or meeting some guy in a park or going to some alley somewhere or calling some delivery service, but they can actually shop for their product like they shop for wine, like they shop for cigarettes. That's where the use goes up, and the stats bear it out. In 2002, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health showed that there were 2 teenage pot smokers for every senior pot smoker. Now, there are 3 senior pot smokers for every 2 teenage pot smokers. And the 2 teenage pot smokers didn't change. In fact, it went down by 190,000. While the pot smoking among seniors went from less than 1 million to 3.1 million in that same decade. So that's who big marijuana is going to market to. All these baby boomers, all these middle-aged people, all these seniors who are going to recognize that marijuana can replace the Ambien, the Tylenol, the Viagra that they're popping like candy. Now, as we continue on this Grass is Not Greener website, they have a couple of sections here, a couple of slideshows. One's called Facts. The other one's called Myths. But it's kind of hard to tell which is which. Let's see if we can figure it out. First one, fact. Regular marijuana use can reduce your IQ by as much as 8 points. Now see, this is not even accurate by their own bullshit. The bullshit that they're quoting here is the Dunedin study from New Zealand that's followed these kids from age 13 on up to age 38 to discover whether or not their heavy use of marijuana would actually lead to any problems cognitively. Now, the study found that the heaviest users actually had IQ that went up. The study found so few marijuana users that didn't use other drugs or alcohol, it was hard to really get a statistical, true reading on what's going on there. And the study was later debunked by another researcher in the same journal who showed you could get the same results with socioeconomic factors instead of marijuana use factors. But even despite that, let's take it for what it's worth. Let's say that that Dunedin study actually is true, that kids who smoke regularly end up losing 8 points in adulthood. That's not what this thing says. This says regular marijuana use can reduce your IQ by as much as 8 points. And since they're rebutting someone, the New York Times, that called for legalization of age 21 up, this is an inference that adults who regularly use could reduce their IQ. And there's no study that has ever shown that. So it's not even true by their own bullshit. Here's another fact. Marijuana increases the risk of heart attack more than 4-fold in the hour after use. You know what else does? Going up the stairs. Having sex. In fact, having any sort of moderately aerobic activity does increase the risk of heart attack. Folks, the risk of heart attack is this very tiny, 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 tiny risk. Even if you multiply it times 4, it's still a tiny, 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 tiny risk. For people who have healthy, functioning cardiovascular systems, marijuana poses no risk of heart attack any more so than any other activity we would accept as reasonable, like drinking or smoking. Fact. Marijuana can lead to schizophrenia, psychosis, and depression. How many times are they going to go back to the well on the schizophrenia and psychosis when we have so much study and history showing this is not true? Worldwide rates of schizophrenia and psychosis remain about the same for the past century. You can look back all the way to English mental hospitals going to the 1900s. And you don't see any greater schizophrenia or psychosis on the timeline, even though the other graph on the timeline, use of marijuana and number of people using it, skyrocket after 1950. You'd think that since people have been using marijuana, since the 1920s, you want to go back to Cab Calloway and Louis Armstrong, since the 1950s, if you want to go to the beat poets, Jack Kerouac and your Lenny Bruce and such, 60s, 70s, God, you'd think we'd have noticed by now a mass increase in schizophrenia, psychosis, and depression. And yet it's just not there. Another fact. Today's marijuana is 4 to 5 times stronger than that of the 1960s and 1970s. And that's scary. Why? Why is that scary? Now, if something's stronger, it doesn't mean that you have to take as much of it. Right? Whiskey is 5 times stronger than wine. But I'm not going to drink wine glasses full of whiskey. Okay? Same thing with doing more potent dabs or more potent buds. I remember back in the day, going back to the 80s, when we would roll a long joint, one of those extra long ones, to smoke amongst the guys in the band, right? And smoke the whole damn joint, and roll another and smoke the whole damn joint between the 5 of us before anybody felt kind of high. These days, we can roll a regular size zig joint, pass it around 5 guys, and not even finish the whole damn thing. And everybody feels high, because that's the way pot smoking works. You smoke it till you get high. And then when you're high, that's enough. And even if you are high and you keep smoking it and keep smoking and keep smoking it, eventually you just, eat some Cheez-Its and take a nap. Whether or not marijuana is stronger now than the 60s or 70s is irrelevant because it's non-toxic. Now, if you were to make something, say, that's 10 times stronger than the average Vicodin, if you had 10 times the active ingredient of a Vicodin in a new pill, if it were 10 times stronger than the Vicodin we're used to, now that might be dangerous. You might have an 11-2 vote against that in the FDA review panel, and yet, for some reason, the company Alkermes had no problem getting that approved by the FDA. Hey, that's all the time we got. For Big Al and Zane, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for Hour 2, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it,